In 1587, over 100 English settlers vanished from their colony on Roanoke Island, leaving behind only an eerie clue carved into a tree: the word CROATOAN. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and armchair internet detectives have tried to solve this mystery. And while there are several strong theories, even the latest discoveries offer more questions than answers. Were they attacked? Did they join local tribes? Or is there something far more sinister at play? As always, viewer discretion is advised. In the late 1500s, England was struggling to establish a foothold in the New World. Spain had already claimed vast territories, and the English were ready to play an aggressive game of catch-up. So, on March 25, 1584, Queen Elizabeth granted Sir Walter Raleigh, a famous English military leader and explorer, a royal charter with an ambitious goal. The charter authorized Raleigh to explore, colonize, and govern new lands for England, provided they weren't already claimed by another Christian nation. In exchange, Raleigh would receive a fifth of any gold or silver he uncovered, along with exclusive rights to the territories he claimed. Essentially, Raleigh had the authority to act as a ruler of any colonies he established, developing them, governing them, and profiting from them as he saw fit. It was a bold move for both Raleigh and England, with the potential to shift the balance of power in the Americas. But this charter came with a time limit. Raleigh had just 7 years to establish his settlement. Establishing a settlement wasn't as simple as just planting a flag. It meant sending enough settlers to build a functioning colony with food supplies, shelter, and defenses. These settlers needed to establish relationships, peaceful or otherwise, with the indigenous populations and find ways to sustain themselves in an unfamiliar and often hostile environment. Even with 7 years, this was no easy task. The risks were high, but so were the potential rewards. Raleigh and Queen Elizabeth envisioned the colony as a dual-purpose venture. Not only could it unlock the valuable natural resources in the New World, but it could also serve as a strategic base for English privateers to raid Spanish treasure fleets. This strategic edge could help tip the scales in the fierce rivalry between England and Spain. Interestingly, the charter Raleigh received had originally been granted to his half-brother, Sir Humphrey Gilbert. Gilbert had pitched the bold idea to Elizabeth years before, but tragically lost his life at sea while attempting to accomplish it. This added a highly personal element to the mission. Raleigh was determined to carry his brother's vision forward, seeing it as both a family legacy and a chance to secure England's future on the global stage. Therefore, for Raleigh, the success of the colony had immense meaning. The failure of Roanoke would not just be a personal defeat, it would represent a significant blow to the entire country's imperial ambitions. This pressure weighed heavily on him and on the 115 settlers, who would have certainly had some grasp of the significance of this grand, uncertain venture. They were well aware success wouldn't come easy in the new settlement, because in fact, this would actually be England's second attempt to colonize Roanoke. 2 years earlier, in 1585, Sir Richard Grenville led England's first attempt to colonize Roanoke, with 108 men under Governor Ralph Lane. Initially, they relied on the local CROATOAN tribe for food and guidance, but conflicts over resources and Lane's harsh leadership style quickly led to hostility and distrust among the native tribes toward the settlers. Lane's unprovoked attack on Chief Wingenah severed the settlers' last ties with the indigenous people, leaving the colony isolated and starving. As their situation grew more desperate with Raleigh's delayed supply ship, hope arrived unexpectedly in 1586 when Sir Francis Drake, the famed English privateer, stopped at Roanoke after successful raids against Spanish ports in the Caribbean. Seeing Drake's arrival as their chance to escape, the settlers chose to abandon the colony and return to England with him. In an ironic case of foreshadowing, the supply ship arrived shortly after, only to find the colony unexpectedly deserted. This failure set the stage for the second, doomed attempt Raleigh was arranging. So, in 1587, Raleigh organized a group of 115 settlers, men, women, and children, to sail to Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. He appointed John White as governor, a trusted figure who had been a part of the first Roanoke expedition. After a 2.5-month-long trip across the Atlantic, the group finally arrived on Roanoke Island, eager to start building their new lives. On Roanoke Island, the settlers built sturdy, timber-framed houses, covered with reeds and clay to keep out the rain, and they built a modest square fort in the middle of the settlement, estimated to be about 200 feet per side. The fort served as storage and as a bunker for surprise attacks, with a protective palisade of sharpened logs. They attempted to establish relationships with the natives, and they began to rely heavily on trade with the local CROATOAN tribe, who were initially quite friendly and taught them essential survival skills, like how to fish in the nearby waters and grow crops in the unfamiliar soil. This fragile alliance gave the settlers hope for a sustainable future in the New World. However, not all local tribes were as welcoming as the CROATOAN. As the settlers expanded their settlement and used more resources, tensions began to build with neighboring tribes, particularly the CROATOAN, who had already gotten a bad taste from the first English group at Roanoke. Disputes over land and dwindling resources soon led to small clashes, and the settlers found themselves increasingly paranoid of attack. Life in Roanoke quickly turned harsh as the settlers faced more than just the threat of attack. The isolation from England was more mentally tolling than they had expected, and the sandy, infertile soil made it difficult to grow enough food to sustain them. As the crops failed, the settlers were forced to rely even more on the shrinking supplies brought over from England and sporadic trade with the CROATOAN. Starvation, illness, and the harsh environment began to take a toll on the colony, pushing it closer to the brink of collapse. The settlers were now living in constant fear of attack, fear of starvation, and fear of the unknown dangers lurking in the wilderness around them. Governor John White knew the colony was on the brink. They couldn't survive much longer without supplies and reinforcements from England. Now Raleigh had planned resupply missions, but these were disrupted when the Anglo-Spanish War broke out in 1588. England's naval resources were diverted to defend against the Spanish Armada, making transatlantic travel risky as Spanish forces targeted English ships. This was catastrophic for the colony, as they were trying to gain traction in this harsh new land. In August 1587, John White, the colony's governor, made the difficult decision to return to England to seek more supplies. He left his family and the other settlers behind, promising to return as soon as possible. When White landed back in England to personally secure supplies, he found that nearly all available ships had been pulled into service for the Anglo-Spanish War. The war had such a strong hold on the resources that John White ended up waiting, stuck in England for 3 before he could finally secure a resupply trip and make his way back to Roanoke. In August 1590, White finally set foot back on Roanoke Island, but what he found left him in shock. Not a single person was there. The settlement was abandoned. Yet everything looked in nearly perfect shape. The houses were standing, and the fort showed no signs of damage. There were no signs of a struggle, no bodies, and no obvious clues to where the settlers had gone. The only hint was the word CROATOAN carved into a tree, and the letters CRO etched on a nearby post. White took this as a sign that the settlers had moved to CROATOAN Island, now known as Hatteras Island, where the friendly CROATOAN tribe lived. But unfortunately for our curiosity, fierce storms prevented White from searching the island, and he was forced to return to England without any answers. Why didn't the settlers leave a more detailed message or more evidence of their plans? Some suggest that the settlers may have been in a hurry, forced to leave the colony unexpectedly. Others propose that the CROATOAN carving was meant to indicate not just a move, but a deeper connection with the CROATOAN people, possibly suggesting that the settlers had integrated into the tribe or sought refuge there after feeling abandoned by England. Since then, this seems to remain the most widely accepted theory, and archaeological evidence, such as European tools and weapons found on Hatteras Island, supports this to some extent, but there is no definitive proof of their ultimate fate. Other theories suggest that settlers may have fallen victim to violence, either from hostile native tribes or Spanish soldiers active in the region, but the lack of remains or evidence of a struggle at Roanoke weakens this argument. Then, of course, there are more eccentric explanations. Some believe the colony tried to relocate and was wiped out by disease or famine, while others suggest more supernatural causes, curses, witchcraft, or even alien abductions. The eerie disappearance, coupled with the cryptic CROATOAN clue, has fueled centuries of wild speculation. Recent archaeological research on Hatteras Island has offered intriguing clues about the fate of the Roanoke settlers. In 2015, The CROATOAN Archaeological Society unearthed European artifacts, sword fragments, rings, writing slates, and gun parts, alongside Native American pottery. But European items alone don't fully confirm assimilation, as they might have arrived through trade between the societies, shipwrecks, or other explorers. Additionally, the artifacts have been uncovered in mixed layers of soil, where centuries of environmental changes and human activity may have scattered items from different time periods together. While these findings likely strengthen the argument for the settlers living with the CROATOAN, they still don't fully solve the mystery. In addition, recent advancements in DNA technology have opened new ways to investigate the fate of the Roanoke settlers. The Lost Colony of Roanoke Y-DNA Project seeks to trace DNA in modern families back to the colonists, aiming to prove that some lineages may have survived. Other researchers are attempting DNA testing on skeletal remains in the area. In 2007, researchers used skeletal remains unearthed from native burial sites in North Carolina to try to identify European ancestry. Though results were inconclusive and ethical concerns have limited further excavation, but researchers remain hopeful that as DNA technology advances and can be performed less invasively to the site, it may one day solve the mystery of what happened to the lost colony. More than 430 years have passed since the settlers of Roanoke disappeared, but the mystery remains unsolved. What do you think happened to them? Were they truly assimilated into the local tribes, or did they meet a darker fate? Maybe the truth will never be known for certain, but the story of Roanoke lives on as one of America's most captivating historical mysteries. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Edge of Survival. If you enjoyed the mystery, please like and subscribe for more incredible stories of survival and adventure. Hope to see you in the next one.